Muslim community doesn't talk about how seriously debilitating mental illness is, and I think people who haven't experienced mania or depression or haven't seen someone close to them go through it, they don't really understand how it can affect every aspect of your life in a way that is out of your control. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I was hesitant to make this video today because I felt like I might face a lot of judgment, but that is exactly why I felt like this video needed to be made. We are more than halfway through Ramadan, and I wanted to discuss living with a mental illness and how it impacts my deen. As a Muslim, I've heard my entire life that prayer is non-negotiable, that in order to succeed in a test, it has to bring you closer to Allah, that Allah does not test anyone with more than they can bear, and that with every hardship there is ease. And I want to be clear that I don't disagree with any of these, but I also want to explain that when you are in a mental health crisis, it is extremely hard and even impossible to understand these sayings. So I wanted to tell my story of living with bipolar disorder while also trying to hold on to my faith. When I had my first manic episode, I was unable to do anything consistently. It was impossible to make myself do things. And for those who have never experienced mania, it causes you to think and behave in a way that is completely out of your control. Because of this, it was impossible for me to pray regularly. I remember going to the mosque for Jummah a couple times because when I was around others, I could make myself pray alongside them. But on my own, it was completely hopeless. Added to that, it was lockdown, so I was alone a lot. And I was also experiencing intense psychosis, during which I would hear voices telling me they were God or that they were the devil and giving me commands to follow. At the time, I had not yet been diagnosed, so this was extremely distressing. This all led to a very strained relationship with Allah, as I couldn't tell what was real and what was not. I thought that psychosis was Allah's way of punishing me, and I would give to charity feverishly in the hopes that it might absolve me. All this time, I had a relationship with Allah in my mind that was punishing and terrifying, but somehow my heart still felt connected to the truth. While Islam was very distressing at the time, it also helped me through psychosis. When I had hallucinations of God's voice commanding me, the voice was male, and I remember even through the thick curtain of psychosis, I thought to myself, this can't be the real God, because Allah is not male. This really helped me tether to reality. Another thing that happened in mania was a delusion of grandeur. I thought at times that I was a prophet, and these thoughts were uncontrollable and involuntary, but somehow I rationalized my way out of it by reminding myself that I couldn't be a prophet because Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the last prophet. When I was struck with depression, I had what I consider to be an even worse experience than the mania and psychosis. At least in mania and psychosis, I knew there was a God, and that Allah was in my heart and guiding me, even if I couldn't make sense of things in my head. Depression was a very different experience entirely. If you have never experienced it, I ask that you listen to what I have to say with compassion rather than judgment, because depression fundamentally changes the way your brain sees the world. When a part of your body hurts, your brain will tell you that your arm or your leg or your heart or your stomach is not working correctly. But when it is your brain that is malfunctioning, you can't tell because the organ that alerts you that things are wrong is what is wrong. When I was depressed, I felt disconnected from everything around me to an extreme. I would look at the night sky and feel as if I was the only person on the planet. I could not feel connected to the closest people in my life, my family. And I also felt no connection to God. It wasn't that my iman was low. It wasn't that I was choosing to disbelieve. I just felt nothing. I did not feel that a God existed. There was nothing to connect to, no presence around me or in my heart, nothing there to make dua to. At this time, it was impossible for me to pray. I could barely keep myself alive. My mom would make me meals and try to force me to eat them. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't even remember how to pray if I tried. My mind couldn't remember Fatiha or At-Tahiyatu. When you're in a state of depression this extreme, you are experiencing insanity. And I know people will say to me that you have to pray no matter what, that it only takes 5 minutes, that you can do it lying down, but my brain could not even comprehend that if you told it to me at the time. I I also remember during this intense period of depression and suffering, my dad telling me that Allah doesn't burden anyone more than they can bear, and that with hardship there is always ease. And I honestly did not believe that to my core. Right now, with a healthy mind, I could not make myself disbelieve that. I could never choose to not believe that with hardship is ease, because I see the evidence every day in my life, and it would be impossible for me to deny that truth. But with depression, your brain cannot process the world accurately. The nature of the illness is that you cannot see the good, the ease, or the reason for living. I remember telling my dad that I don't believe in that. And you might say that I was in a state of disbelief, or that I shouldn't say anything against Allah, or that I was a bad Muslim. But my dad did the best thing he could have possibly done. He said nothing. He let me say what I was experiencing. He allowed me to express the truth of what I felt. The fact that my family never pushed back, never made me feel bad, never told me I should be praying or fasting or being patient, was the most beautiful thing they could have done for me. It allowed me to find space. It allowed me to find my way back to Allah in my own way at my own time. And I will always be grateful for the way they listened to me instead of trying to convince me otherwise. My depression lasted for years, and I didn't pray, and I couldn't even make dua. At the time, I felt terrible. I thought I was a terrible Muslim, that Allah would be displeased with me for not engaging in worship, for not having conviction, for not believing, and for not using this trial to get closer to Him, as it had been instilled into me that I should always do. One major fear I had at that time was that I would die in this state of disbelief. I was so scared I would return to Allah not being someone who prayed. And at the time, I was convinced that there was no hope for me. But when I look back at it now, even though I wasn't praying, it just shows that in my heart, I wanted to be a person who prayed. The fact that I even feared dying in a state of disbelief is a testament to my belief. My mind was broken. It was telling me that I was forsaken, that there was no God. But I can see now that Allah was with me the whole time. He put in my heart a desire to return to Him, pleasing and well pleased. And even at my lowest, when I could not connect with Allah, even through the most basic level of making dua, I knew that Allah would bring me back to Him in some way. The only thing that eventually lifted my depression was finding the right medication after years of trial and error. During this time, I fluctuated between thinking there was no God, that God would not help me, that I was forsaken by God, and these are all symptoms of depression. I want to stress that the despairing thoughts that you have in depression are the depression. It's not a reflection of who you are or what you actually believe. Through this time, I sought a lot of help. I really tried to get myself out of the depression. I went to see a psychiatrist weekly. I tried to seek therapy time after time, even when I had to go through multiple therapists until I found someone I could connect to. I even went to the Muslim chaplain at my school for help. What helped the most was finding the right meds and finding a therapist who didn't pressure me to do things I wasn't ready for, who taught me to treat myself with compassion and to trust the conviction in my heart that made me want to return to Allah, and that knew no matter how long it took, I would find my way back. There was a seed of wisdom in my heart that knew I didn't have to rush, and that Allah would guide me back to Him in the perfect time, and I relied on that above all else. Even when I went to see my chaplain, she tried to get me to start praying at least once a day, but I honestly wasn't ready for that. I was still recovering from all that I had been through because of my bipolar disorder, and especially trying to make sense of my thoughts about God and about religion. My therapist recently, on the other hand, taught me that I can't choose what to feel. Whether I feel connected to Allah or not is not in my control, but I could choose to engage in acts of worship regardless. And hearing this was so comforting and revolutionizing for me. It dissolved the guilt I'd been feeling for years and made me realize that even though my actions were small and I couldn't fulfill the mandatory obligations upon me, I was always still attempting to move closer to Allah in a way that eventually brought me here. This Ramadan, I started being able to pray again, not from my own ability, but because Allah allowed me the health and stability to be able to. I've only been praying once a day, Maghrib with my family, and praying with others is really important in helping me get back into the habit. And I know I will soon be doing all my prayers every single day, and I look forward to that so intensely. In little ways, I'm getting back to it. I've been finding comfort in reading Quran, something I haven't been able to do since my psychosis, and something I haven't been able to do since bipolar took away my ability to read books for a while. I started to say adhkar in the morning and in the evening, just one dua to start, and it makes me feel like I'm enveloped in a blanket of Allah's protection and mercy. I'm telling you this story because our minds can lie to us, and that is not always in our control. Your mind can tell you that you are distant from Allah, but that might not be reality. Even the desire to be close to Allah is a sign of His nearness. I think it is important for the Muslim community to talk about the severe impacts of mental illness and how it can be so debilitating that you can't even perform the obligatory acts of worship. But I also wanted to remind myself that it is not my own actions that will save me anyways. It is always Allah's mercy that allows us to pray, to do good, to yearn for connection. It is He who understands what I'm going through even better than I can, who takes into account my intentions, and who taught me so much about His compassion and mercy through my experience with mental illness. So if you are depressed and struggling with feeling close to Allah, if you are feeling the test you are going through is taking you away from Allah rather than bringing you closer, if you feel like you're being tested with more than you can bear, please trust that Allah's plan for you is to always bring you closer to Him, to always turn your heart back to Him, even if it doesn't happen in the way you're expecting or during the timeline you expect. I hope that this video helped anyone who might be going through it right now, or anybody who has experienced shame because of the way their mental illness has impacted their religion. We are in the month of mercy, so let your heart believe that Allah will be merciful to you no matter what. And please remember to keep praying for Palestine, for Sudan, for Congo, and for the liberation of all oppressed people around the world. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.